All right, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to episode number 26 of the Battlefield Show, the only Battlefield talk show here on Twitch. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for coming along. I can see that the Mus gang is here. Hello, welcome, everybody. I am joined here with Battlefield ex-professional gamer, known hacker, Mr. Music. Hello, Music. How you doing?
Hello. And also, I don't really hope that people call themselves Mustang. Jesus.
Musk. No.
Please, to all my subs out there who are probably watching this, please don't call yourself that. Please, you know better.
All right. So about the whole face cam thing. Hey, I tried, and it's like, hey, you down? And Music was simply like, I don't have a webcam.
I don't have a webcam. I even tell people this all the time. I don't own a webcam. I have no need for a webcam. I don't want a webcam, so I'm good. All right, guys, got to look at the logo, I guess, and listen to ASMR for me and Julian.
There you go. Well, I hope you guys enjoy it the rest of the stream. Maybe I might whisper for the rest of the night. I don't know.
Oh, now you're just turning on the kinks of a lot of people.
Welcome, everybody, coming on here. Of course, this is the Battlefield Show. We're going to be talking with Music about Battlefield and many other different things you may not know about Music. Who knows? The first thing I wanted to go and touch on is your Battlefield history. What was your first Battlefield?
My first Battlefield, of course, was 1942. A little Battlefield game that came out during the good old year of 2002. I was 12 at the time, about 12 years old, and this was coming off of me being in a huge World War II kick, simply because up until this point, probably since I was about 10, I had been playing Dave Defeat, which was my first multiplayer shooter. And I've talked about that extensively many times, where Dave Defeat, still in my eyes, was probably my favorite shooter that I ever got into. But granted, things look a little different when you're 10 compared to when you're now almost 30 years old. But at the time, it really was a huge influential game for me, just because not only was the prime of World War II films coming out, you had like Saving Private Ryan, you had Band of Brothers coming out, and going on the World War II binge was there because World War II games were coming out left and right. And then
Call of Duty got into that.
Call of Duty was 2003. Yeah, and that was coming off of Medal of Honor. But then 1942 came out, obviously, which was then based off of DICE's first game, which I believe was Codename Eagle. I want to say is what it was called.
I think that strikes a bell. Yeah, I think it's something like that.
And it was very unique for the time, because Battlefield 1942 really was such a different game, because it was like, oh, not only do I have infantry, I have separate classes now. Oh, I can get in this tank. I can drive a car. What is this game? This is amazing. And so it really was the start of something unique, because a lot of people hadn't really played full-blown combined arms games at that point, including myself. So it was something that hooked me right away, where I'm like, oh, I can actually do other things that seem so immersive. Yeah. And I loved it as a kid. It was wonderful.
Did you end up playing Battlefield 2? Or you played all of them? You played all of them, right? I have
played every Battlefield game, every single one, even console ones. I even played the lesser known and not very good, and I'm probably going to trigger some people for saying that. Oh, no. But the Battlefield 2 version on the console, where you could swap players, interesting mechanic, by the way, but
interesting. Wow.
It wasn't very good. But that was back during the days where we had different console games and different PC games, and Battlefield 2 was, of course, based off of Desert Combat, and they brought in the Desert Combat guys to make BF2, and the BF2 was on PC is amazing as well. And I have a lot of fun memories. What was that stupid game called?
What was that? The console version of BF2. What was it called again?
It was Modern Combat. It was called Battlefield 2 Modern Combat.
Modern Combat? Yeah.
It was a totally different experience compared to the Refractor-based games, but those were, of course, during different times, again, where we had games that would come under the same name, but they'd be totally different games, just like how Call of Duty games on consoles during that era were totally different compared to what we had on PC.
Gotcha. Let's just get this out of the way. What was your favorite Battlefield game?
Bad Company too.
Bad Company 2. Oh man. So in Bad Company 2, you're heavily invested in well, competition, really. What
Yep.
was your main team? I think it was like Legacy Esports, right?
Legacy Esports was the team I joined during Bad Company too, and that was kind of its own interesting story of joining because it wasn't my original intent on competing. It wasn't like, oh, I'm just going to join this team to compete. It was like, well, I'm playing with some old friends because at the time it was, coming off of the end of me being in AOD in 2007 to 2010. So I was just kind of
Hmm.
doing my own thing, still kept in contact with friends. And I was heavily playing with my old friend and teammate Radix,
Cool.
who was on AOD with me. And I'd known Radix since 2005. I haven't talked to him in many, many years now because I think he joined the
Hmm.
military. But even then, I miss the guy. But we, at the time, we're just playing the game. We're like, oh look, another new Battlefield game came out. We're like, oh sweet, this one looks
Oh
great.
man. And
Because at the time,
it wasn't just a regular old Battlefield game. I mean, this is a whole new engine. It must have
it
been
was
crazy.
it was coming off the
How
point
were we gonna do it?
where 1943 was promised to us on PC because that's when
Right,
1943
right.
came out on the Xbox arcade and everyone's going, oh, they're like, oh yeah, this is gonna come to PC, and we're all waiting for it. We're like, yes, this is gonna finally be our chance to experience Frostbite,
Yep.
and it never came. And I know a lot of us are still out there talking about like, man, they really should have done that, and we kind of wish 1943 had come to PC, but this was the first time after a full lull in a while between 2142 to then that the only thing that came out was Bad Company 1 in 1943. So we were itching at that point for another Battlefield game on PC. We were ready. And when I still will attest to this day that DICE made their best trailers for Bad Company 2 because they did the one thing that I wish they would do now, which is just gameplay. Because it was
Damn.
just gameplay trailers, and the one that
Damn.
always sticks with me the most is the Panama Canal trailer for BC2. Because
Mm.
even though you could tell some things were slightly scripted a little bit, it was still just it was actual gameplay. So you're like, oh, you can do this. This looks amazing.
So when I think about music here, I always think about his partner in crime here, Ravik, who I don't think would ever try to do something like this, but I tried. Okay, I tried. But you guys are two peas in a pod. Where the hell did you guys first meet?
Legacy. I mean, we were friends. That's really what it comes down to. It just, you have people who equal minded and you had connect on different things that you enjoy and you play the game. And he's pretty much one of the only people I've kept in contact with significantly over the years because everybody else has kind of dropped off. Granted, I think the only teammate I relatively talk to on a normal basis is Smack, but Smack has been playing Apex Legends nowadays more than anything else. So,
Yeah,
uh, Rav's pretty much been the only person that's kind of played Battlefield since, but even then, it's just, we like the games. We play the games for friends.
yeah. Then BF4 came along, right?
Then Battlefield 4 came along and it was a disaster. Um,
Disaster.
it was a
So you guys
disaster.
were second guessing yourselves, like I don't know about this one, guys.
At this
Like,
point, Fragment had already kind of, we were at that
yeah.
point, we got to number two on the leagues between Squad Rush against Rival. And we were back in the BC2 scenario where it's like, yeah, we'll play any other team, but Rivals, they're really our only competition outside of playing against European teams. But
Oh shit.
playing European teams on their own is a nightmare because ping differentials. Um, but yeah, at that time it was more or less we competed in Fragment for so long that we just decided that we didn't really want to compete in BF4. Rather, we wanted to see what BF4 was like, and
Mm-hmm.
BF4 was not good. It launched in the most terrible, awful state where a bunch of us couldn't play. The gunplay changed so drastically. Metas were entirely different. Vehicles were so strong. It
Mm-hmm.
just wasn't fun for us, for a lot of us. So we're like, okay, including myself. And that was the big thing. It just wasn't fun. And I had no real ambition or drive to continue competing. I just didn't want to compete anymore. Just because the game wasn't in a good place that made sense for me to compete.
And
So
I
that's when
found
I
this,
just started playing for fun.
Yeah, I found this really old clip of 5v5 diffuse at PDX LAN when you were with Legacy, and I recognize some names in there. There's Fedge, who I see you play with all the time still. This was back in 2014.
Fedge and I have known each other for many, many years. He's been a childhood friend, so
sick.
Fedge just kind of has been brought in through me. But PDX led, even though we have in that clip that I'm looking at now that you brought up, even though we have the name of Legacy, this wasn't actually us playing under the name of Legacy, because at the time Legacy had been gone for years. So they're like, oh, we need a team name. We're like, fuck it, Legacy.
Okay, so what was your team name then?
We didn't have a team name. It was literally just a LAN where there was a tournament happening, and this was one of the tournaments where, if you look up, Level Battlefield was there casting this as well. That was Daskro at the time, and he was there casting it, and they just needed a team name, so we chose Legacy, and that's what we did. We were just like, yeah, we'll bring it back for this tournament, and we did. And this is at the time that I see in the clip where we still had, Slaughter, who was in Fragment, and then went to Exertus, and Rav at the time, who was also playing under Exertus.
Yeah,
and Beast Mila was one of my old friends as well, who I had known from high school many, many years ago. Just happened to be there, so they needed a fifth, so I chose him, and this was all LAN.
Hey, let's listen in a little bit to this. This is what it was like back in 2014 Battlefield. All you youngins in the chat, check this out.
Let's go to music and see what he's doing. He is at 70% health, still pushing on the periphery into the crane. Trying to get shots.
Oh, man, that recoil, huh?
Gas lamp did go down, though. Aztec, though, did take out
This was back
Raven.
during when you had metas like Ace 52.
Oh, ends up dying.
Well, granted, I still think Ace 52 was probably the only weapon I truly enjoyed Engineer-wise.
Oh, no.
You had people, of course, playing the medic, metas, and Scar H, M16, AEK.
It's now 2 on 4.
But, it was all over the place. Most people would be using Ace 23, or at least you would see a lot of those Axiom guys using Ace 20.
The bombs are already being planted. It's armed. He's not in a good position.
I'm sure so many people are like, what the hell is diffuse?
The walls are collapsing around
it was a shoehorned idea of taking Counter-Strike mode and putting it in Battlefield 4 because that's what the kids like, apparently. It's still one of my big gripes that for some reason Squad Rush just wasn't chosen. Squad Rush was way better mode at the time, and I still will argue to this day it is the definitive Battlefield competitive mode. And it is interesting to watch and play, but Defuse was just like, let's take Counter-Strike and put it in here with revives.
Why not?
A lot of us weren't too thrilled at LAN when this was brought out. They were like, oh, we have to play this.
I see. I was thinking like maybe you guys did like this kind of stuff. But...
Oh, no. This was one of those things that was just shoehorned in that were like, yeah, we're going to play this mode. And we're like, do we have to? Okay. So we did, and it forced us definitely to a different scenario of thinking of strats and playing different things, but it's what we had to do.
Well,
like Jonathan Fatality Wendell, who even now still streams on Twitch nowadays, which is still really cool. But for someone like me, when I was coming up and you're hearing about all of these pro players and you look at him, you realize that, my God, he made money doing what people at the time thought was absurd. Like he's going to lands and dominating people on his game. He shows no common disregard for them. He's there to do one thing: destroy you. And that was such a huge inspiration for me, because it's the Mamba mentality of if you're gonna do something, you dominate it. You try to be the best you that you can, especially if you're going on a server for bragging rights or money or whatever it is. You gotta prove yourself, and that was a huge inspiration for me personally. Was just like, I wanted to be the best that I could. I knew I never could be the best, and there are people who are always going to be better than me, but dear God, if I'm going to play in a server, I'm going to try my best, and I'm going to make especially on a competitive level.
Oh yeah, you scare all of us away all the time. It's like, music's in here. Bye. I'm out of here.
And that's not even me going try hard mode for the most part.
Oh no,
I'm
no,
just
no.
playing the game. It's a totally different experience when you go into competitive mode.
Oh, absolutely. I tried that out, not in AOD, but in earlier games like in 2142, where I would usually just pub stomp, and then someone asked me, "You want to be on the team?" I was like, "Sure." And I get on there, man, I am just ass, like terrible. I try to learn. I try to hold my corners and you know, do all. It was hard work. I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like, I just want to play.
A
And
lot of people don't have what it takes. Yeah,
yeah, and I just
it's
gave up on
definitely
that.
it's mentally
It's hard.
taxing at times, especially because you're
Oh
very
yeah.
hyper aware of where everybody is playing on your team, what their roles are, what they have to do. They have to make specific call outs, who's coming to you, what you have to do. Do you have help on a rotation? Are you all alone holding this one section? Can you reposition yourself? There's so many different variables that come into play that's all gut reaction that it's it's definitely mentally taxing as well, just because
Oh
you
yeah,
have
and
to
all,
take
all
in
the
a lot.
you gotta practice like a mother, dude.
Yep.
And
That's another thing.
then going into Call of Duty is where I tried it again with some really good players. Ended up picking up a little bit. I was like, I could get myself into this. But then school got in the way, college got in the
Mhm.
way, and I'm like, I have time for this. Like, I cannot be doing this. How did that work out for you? Did
I
school
mean,
get in
granted,
the
at the
way or
time,
things like?
I mean, school definitely in life always got in the way, but
Yeah.
it was one of those things that at the time I made sacrifices. I had
Okay.
to. Like, I wouldn't say I had to, but I wanted to. And I
Yeah.
think that's something that a lot of kids these days, even growing up playing modern esports now, are
Oof.
realizing that if you want to achieve your goal, and if you want to do something and you want to do it well, you're going to have to make sacrifices. A lot of things are going to have to go on the back burner. Like, oh, your friends want to go out one night and they invited you? Can't. You got to scrim. You got
Yep.
practice. You have a tournament coming up in the next couple days. And it's tough sometimes, but I got through it when I was competing. And I think by Battlefield 4, when I stopped, is when I realized too that I just didn't have the time anymore. I had to make things more precedented for me, and
So yeah. So
I
around that
definitely don't
time,
regret it.
I'm sure you heard about other ex professionals doing YouTube, doing streaming. Is that kind of where it just, oh, hey, maybe that might be good for me after BF4?
I mean, I still credit Rav to it to this day. It was just one of those things that was just like, hey, you were pretty good, and you still are pretty good at Battlefield. Why not try streaming it? And I was like, oh, well, okay, why not? And that was during Battlefield 4. And here I am now 6 years later, still streaming, still enjoying
Yeah.
myself, still having a good time, just for the love of not only the game but of the community that's kind of around, and
Yeah.
just everything else.
When I first started watching Twitch, I didn't watch you way back then. I didn't know what Twitch was. Is that's where you started, right? Twitch or
Twitch,
Justin
I started
TV, I guess it was
right on
called.
Twitch, right as it was coming closer from the disband of Justin TV, because that was when Justin TV was still active.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like right at the end of when Justin TV was being forcefully shut down and then merged back into Twitch. So I think I had the benefit of kind of starting early on, right as Twitch was getting big. But even then, to this day, I'm still obviously a small streamer, and that's fine. I've never had any major intention of being big, but who doesn't want to be a big streamer, right? Um,
You're a big streamer in my eyes.
well, thank you. But that's really what it was. And yeah, I at the time it was just like, yeah, I have some competitive experience. I think I'm pretty good at the game. Maybe other people will enjoy it. And it turns out there were a lot of people who did enjoy it. And I still have subs to this day who are 6 years old that I'm still thankful that they're still around putting up with my ass all these years.
Well, I would think from like a professional player, usually professional players that I watch are either extremely frustrated with things and really like express themselves, or they're like extremely quiet. Are you one of the extremely quiet ones when you were first starting streaming?
I mean, I think it was one of those things that I probably was. But once you realize I think for me, it was a learning process too, because it's like, all right, there are people
Mhm.
obviously on this platform who are getting viewers. What are they doing? I still say that's one
Okay.
of the things that people should be doing too,
Oh yeah.
even today, is if learn what people are doing that makes people want to join your stream and try to apply it in your way while being yourself. And that's what I did. I took a lot of lessons from other people out there who were successful at what they were doing and had viewers, and I put my own twist on it while being myself. And it was just, yeah, at first I was quiet, but then I had people started talking, and I started talking back to chat. And then I started, laughing at my mistakes and trying to bring up topics of conversation with people. And I still do that today. And it's the
Oh
best
yeah.
part of streaming is just interacting with people and sharing your experiences that I think a lot of people can relate to, that helps bring viewers in. So it was one of those things that I was very pleased when things started picking up. And I'm glad that even today, if it's still not much, I can still share my experiences with others.
Yeah. That's the best part, I think, is you're playing a game that you like and people are there to experience it with you and you can talk about it with them live is something I always want to do since Battlefield 4. I wanted to start streaming when you would start streaming back in BF4. Man, I just wish I had the tech really to start doing that. I didn't have the money to invest in a computer or a webcam. Like those were like so expensive back then.
I barely had the tech, and that's the thing. I barely had the tech to do it, and I had enough just to start on a single stream PC while getting terrible frames, terrible bitrate. It wasn't good, but
I tried it, dude.
It was something I wanted to do.
Let's start at the beginning here. You become a Battlefield EA game changer, and they fly your ass out to Gamescom in Germany, where you're gonna try Battlefield for the first time? Question mark.
Battlefield 5 for the first time since the alpha. Yes, since the alpha. So that we played the alpha where it was open, and this was right when they were releasing Rotterdam for the first time. So they're like, okay, we have made progress, and here's Rotterdam. So that's what they flew us out to test out, was basically right as Rotterdam was about to drop for everybody to play.
I had a video here from Neebs Gaming, actually. Neebs, you see Neebs? And they put out a video of them doing the Gamescom thing back in August 2018. Wow.
Just those people. I'm like, for those who haven't met him, Thick44 is like the biggest sweetheart you will ever meet. And he is just such a kind person. He was such a cool dude. I got to meet so many of these people that you see online, and you get to meet them for the first time and hear what they're really like. Are they the same as their persona? And yeah, some people are definitely the same, and some people I would say, they have to put on a different face for what they do, but they're relatively the same people.
Here's the cool things that he said about you here. Listen along here.
Didn't care.
I didn't care.
You didn't care.
And normally when we go to these events, we play against really, really good players. And not that I didn't play against good players, but there were two factors in this. Factor number one, they weren't always good players sometimes. Sometimes we played against press.
Oh.
Which you're probably going to see a lot of reviews on Battlefield 5 saying it's hard to stay alive. The second factor is I squatted up with 3 guys the whole week. The same 3 guys. Number one, you know him, Pony Lion.
Oh, yeah, I like Pony. Good
Pony's
peoples.
a good player. Yeah, he's a good player.
Good player, good peoples.
And then 2 former competitive players by the name of Ravik and Music. Music probably being the best Battlefield player on Twitch right now.
Hey, if
so
you're going to have teammates, those sound like the teammates to have.
I had bodyguards the whole time.
That was very high praise from
No
him.
one could kill me.
My fun is just going to be great.
Yeah.
See, that's what we do when we send people to events. Like even like Duralius and Simon, who are bad at games. Just set them up with those guys. They'll be fine.
By the way.
Yeah, see? And, high praise indeed. That was Thick44, right? The one I was talking to?
Yeah, that was Thick. He was talking to, I think, Duralius, who was there. But either way, Thick was just, oh my gosh, one of the nicest people I think you'll ever meet. And it really was true for that whole, we were there. We were just playing the same squad. We would go at the same time. We're like, all right, we just want consistency. and we're gonna play. And we did, and it was a lot of fun. And this is when we first started speculating too, as he talks about in his video. We're like, is the ZH really a two shot? Like, this is the first time experienced the ZH, and we're like, is this
Look at it now.
Yeah, and it's now a part of the game and you're used to it, but at the time we weren't used to big 2-shot rifles, especially for scouts. We're like, this is going to be abused. And I would say it's still heavily abused at all, but it's definitely up there in terms of top tier usage by some people for sure. It's one of those things, again, that you wish that developers were there in the process, listening to the feedback directly, because you want to give the feedback directly to them, not the community manager. So it's like having a surrogate that's taking your words and then kind of can't give the full picture in between, is what it feels like. And I know that the community managers are doing their best. Absolutely. That's their jobs. But when it comes down to the developers now and how the game is currently, it seems like there is something going on, especially in the recent rumblings of developers leaving, in the higher ups being switched around. It feels like the game is somehow being manipulated by a higher power that, and this is pure speculation and conjecture, by the way. I have no proof of this. This is just from what I'm seeing. It feels like there's some puppet master pulling the strings as to what needs to be done instead of what should be done. And as a player and everybody else, you kind of feel that in the game, because I'm pretty sure that a lot of people out there, especially, oh God, who was I can't remember the developer. What was it after the first time to kill change? He's like, we never want to do this again. We never want to do another time to kill change again. And then 5.2 comes along.
Name.
All I know is I think he left DICE at some point. He was one of the people who left, and he was like,
recently,
I think he came out with a tweet saying, he's like, trust me, we tried to fight against this. It's like, at least I tried to fight against it. So it was, it kind of leads more again to that speculation of who's really pulling the strings for this game and what's happening, especially for players, because we're the ones who suffer. We're the ones that play the game. We can't control what's being done, and it sucks.
Wasn't TTK one of the main focuses of gameplay here on these betas and these alphas?
Time to kill definitely is one of those things that you're noticing from the start, right? Because like I said, we were worried more about like STG time to kill, because that thing was a monster in the alpha. We were just at this point testing every single weapon, and in this clip you're showing, I was just testing medic to see how medic felt. And medic felt pretty good at this time.
At that time. Oh, baby.
And then it kind of changed to where I think they were straying away from medic, and I still say they kind of backed themselves into a hole with this one, where they were trying to stray away from the old medic metas of BF4, where everybody would run around with your AEK compensator stubby grip, and now they didn't want to have that sort of power in medic anymore. They wanted it to be more up close and personal. But at the time, the EMP felt pretty good in the beta, but nowadays, the entirety of the SMG class has just changed, where it doesn't feel super great, or rather certain guns feel way too strong and others still feel underpowered. It's just a weird mess.
Yeah, I have a strange theory about Battlefield as a whole, and kind of like as a blunder, to say the least, where the game didn't sell very well. It didn't sell in the UK very well when it comes to actual physical copies. That stat that they always have, that I kind of always find a little bit meaningless nowadays, because everything's digital now. But let's just say they didn't make enough or a lot of money off of this game, right? And they needed to buy time or something, because it looked like they wanted to go all in with Battlefield 5 with the first few patches and make their way to the Pacific content, like all in. Everything was changing all the time. There were huge UI fixes, and then the TTK stuff came up in around Christmas time for the first one. Everyone's like, no, you can't do that. This is not what we wanted. We already tested this. This is what we wanted.
I kind of want to give a sidebar there. is that
Yeah.
when the first time to kill change happened, I was actually one of the few people who didn't mind, believe it or not. I did not mind the time to
Okay.
kill change because, but granted, I will always say I look at games differently because of my competitive background. So I'm looking at it probably more from a competitive standpoint than a casual perspective. I'm very hyper aware of that. But for me, it was like, headshot modifiers at the time for that first time to kill weren't changed. So headshots mattered a bit more and it felt good because it was like, oh, you're rewarding people who are aiming for the head. This feels great. But a lot of people were really upset because, it was more a test to the fact that some people weren't realizing that and they were going, oh, people are bullet sponges.
Hmm.
And yeah, I could see it. But for me, I still didn't really think it was that bad and didn't really need that sort of outlash. I still have a big gripe with the Reddit hive mind, as I call it, where one person goes,
exactly.
I don't like thing, and then another person snowballs and goes,
I don't
yeah,
like it.
yeah, I don't like thing.
Rabble,
Yeah,
rabble,
me
rabble.
too. Rabble, rabble, rabble. Yeah, so everybody kind of snowballs onto it of also not liking thing, but I think for the last one, it definitely was warranted because it was a whole overhaul in 5.2 that just kind of ruined it for a lot of people, but I don't think the first one really was worth the rabble.
And this was a live service game. Like, hey, we cannot.
This was definitely DICE's first attempt at what they call a live service, and for what they call a live service, it's more like a drop service, is what it is. A drop from the
illusion.
faucet.
It's an illusion that you are getting things every week, every day, every month.
The current, yes. The big problem is the current tier upgrades or what they have for the Tides of War, which is just kind of funny in my eyes because now it's like, well, we've run out of content to give, so here's a tier upgrade. So
again, buying time. I think this game, when it comes to putting actual real money into it, where it comes to like, well, making maps is where the big money is, right? It costs a lot to make a map, and this new a new Tides of War mission or new factions or those kinds of things cost a lot of money.
Yeah.
And I think they had to cancel literally everything that was after the Pacific. I'm sure they had tons of plans for this game. You can see it all over through the code, but now it's like dead silent, and it's been dead silent since they stopped working on the UI and when we heard about the 5v5 game mode being canceled around that time.
Definitely a lot of things that feel like it ties into one big thing. I agree.
But a lot of people don't know about that or don't realize, because everyone's like, oh my god, like, we're going to get the Russian expansion soon. We're going to get the, the invasion of Normandy and Europe and all that. Mm-hmm. At this point, dude, I'm not seeing that like it was for the Pacific.
I'm going to be right with you. I think the big thing that people right now, unfortunately, is for most people who play this game need to realize is that I'm pretty sure a lot of future content is gone and scrapped. I don't believe for a second that we're probably going to see another major theater of war. If we did, I would honestly be shocked.
I would be shocked. Yes,
I'd be pleasantly surprised, but shocked.
Well, I'm worried about Battlefield 6. Straight up, I'm worried about that. Like,
right.
Whoa, all the money
going
should be
back
going
to what you said earlier in terms of them scrapping certain things and things going dead silent. I think a lot of it also had to do with another game that came out, if you recall, called Star Wars Battlefront 2. And Star Wars Battlefront 2 is also under DICE's mitigation of, fixing the game itself. And that was its own massive debacle and still holds the record of the highest downvote on Reddit, because who doesn't like to feel a sense of pride and accomplishment?
I felt like that game was a framework for all EA first-person shooters or action games. Battlefront 2 was the template how we wanted to move forward. Battlefront
is actually really interesting, and I still bring this up because with the first
Yeah.
Battlefront game that came out, the remake, if you look at how that game plays and then you go to Battlefield 1, you realize, wow, there's a lot of reused assets from Battlefront to here.
Oh yeah.
Like
The
when you see some
UI
of the,
in the beta.
the,
Oh man.
the UI, you see the stormtroopers running in Battlefront 1, and then you look at the soldiers running in Battlefield 1, you're like, oh, there's
Mhm.
definitely reused assets, but this is nothing new. Anybody with an eye can tell that there are certain reused assets from dice game to dice game because it saves time and money.
Oh yeah.
But I
Old
think it's
code.
going to
Yeah.
show that most people nowadays are starting to realize that too, not
Mhm.
only in the game itself, but I think as I've been a total advocate of this for years, Dice really does, I think, at this point, need to find a way to make the Frostbite engine not so terrible the way it is, or EA really needs to just allow them to work on something different in a different engine wise.
I feel
Because I
like that's
really
what they're doing
think
right now. I feel like
I
that's
would
it.
love to believe that they're using a different engine, but I
Oh,
don't
I mean,
believe
that'd be
they are.
cool. No, no, I don't think they are either, but I would like them to.
The big thing that you can probably take away from all of this too is that Battlefront 2 had the luxury of being tied to the Disney license and
Mhm.
having that Disney money, and the fact that you're appealing at not only a convenient time where your Star Wars new trilogy is releasing films every year or every other year. You're building a fan base of people who love Star Wars, and Star Wars is just like a pop culture icon. The name is everywhere. Everybody knows that. And so people are going to pay more attention to the name Star Wars than a Battlefield game. So if one of your Star Wars games is broken and has created a massive scandal of its own, and you have a Battlefield 5 game or World War II game that's also broken, which one are you going to fix first? You're going to go for the one that brings in the more players, which means
Yep.
more copies. And again,
Mhm.
speculation and conjecture. That's what it feels like. But
Yeah.
it really is, as a Battlefield fan, it is kind of disappointing to see what feels like now is a skeleton crew working on the game.
Mhm.
And it just kind of stinks as a player because you're just stuck in this funk of playing the same things over and over again. And it's getting to kind of how I felt with Battlefield 4 towards the end, where you're in this, you're like, oh, I want to play, but it's the same things again and again and again.
Yeah, we were talking about whether we should bring premium back. I've been talking with a lot of people about that.
I
And
agree.
you have any?
I
Yeah,
I agree. I do. I've
they're
thought
better
about
at
that
it.
for a long, long time. The big thing that people obviously don't like about premium is that, there's a paywall behind it and you're separating your audience.
I
And
hate that
most
part of it.
people, yeah, again, I think everybody doesn't like that. However, with it, it goes to show that there is a promise of something that is actually coming. And we haven't
Right.
had that issue, at least in Battlefield 3 or 4 or 1, because every time we paid for premium, we got our premium content. Whereas now it was like, oh, look, I paid $80 for the game and I got a red demon skin on my KE7. You guys want to see my $80 skin? That's it. It kind of stinks because
Well, and
premium really did offer a lot of content that you could at least see what was coming. Whereas now we're just like, if it comes, it comes.
I feel like they tried that initially, and they're like, everyone was asking for a roadmap, and then they brought a roadmap, and then they quickly learned that they didn't have the time for it. A lot of things were delayed. A lot of things that were when the game first came out, like there were war stories that weren't finished yet. There were practice range was gone. Vehicle customization was gone. You couldn't even put skins on your tanks.
Yeah.
Many things were missing from that, and that was just a bad look right away. And, and that's coming off of deluxe edition. It's just mistakes and mistakes are just made constantly. They try to rework it, and then they couldn't actually go with it, or they couldn't fulfill that promise. So things got delayed, which made things worse. Then a TTK changes, makes everybody mad, and then there's more delays. It's like constantly not good. So
No.
It's just we're at that stage right now. Is can they make a comeback? I think they can.
The
but
big promise.
Are they putting their money in where their mouth is? Are they gonna actually make the next game where EA was talking about that? Can they make that something?
Well, it's like you said earlier. The big thing is that we have already basically, because of EA conference calls and them talking about, okay, we're looking at another Battlefield fiscal year of 2022, which means the game's coming out 2021. So at this point next year, we're wondering, how long has this been going on for now? This game, 2 years now, or is it 3?
Maybe it's I hope.
Probably 2 years now, and it's going to be coming up on 3, I guess I should say, because of 2021.
Yep.
But within this next year, they definitely have to do something, is what it feels like, to get people to keep playing. Otherwise, once again, we're already in a trickle down effect where there probably will be nothing left, and there'll probably be another hardline situation for PC, and then you're just going to have everybody who goes back to BF1 or 4 or whatever their poison is. But I do agree that currently there is nothing really engaging for players right now to keep playing. The Tides of War is kind of a joke in the sense of, oh, log in, and get the tier reward for something that you may have already done if you play the game a lot. And then there's something like, oh, log in on this day and get company coin. And spend it on what? That's the big
I think that's
thing.
all they can do at this point at home. Like, what can we? Any tech that we have in right now? Oh, we can give them company coin. That's easy.
And then we can talk about, of course, the disaster that's Firestorm. That was literally a knee-jerk slap-on reaction of the popularity of battle royales. It was like, yes, we're making a battle royale to compete with other battle royale. Come join our battle royale, fellow kids. And it's
but the DICE devs are like, hey, wait a second, we don't have time for this shit. And they're like, well, we got Criterion, they can do it. And it's like, all right, fuck it, let's go. And
either way, it's a waste of assets and money, because it feels like that could have been spent by taking your current game, giving it to Criterion, and be like, okay, is there something you can make to add on currently to our already existing game and not a battle royale? And I think
could have made the Russian theater of war. They could have done that.
They could have pulled something like what DICE LA did, which is, you had DICE LA that worked on previous expansions, but DICE LA, of course, now has been entirely scrapped and rebranded and now works under Vince Zampella. And so
that makes me so mad thinking about that right now.
I'm happy for Vince Zampella and where that company will probably go with making different IPs, but I do agree in the sense of Battlefield, it suffered hard because they couldn't. It now lies squarely on the shoulders of DICE Sweden. That's really what it is. DICE Sweden now, the ball's in their court, and they got to do something with the game currently that will make people enjoy the game again, or at least do something that the Pacific did again. And it needs to happen during this upcoming year, or you're going to see some major consequences in the player base for sure.
Do you like battle royales?
I enjoy battle royales, yes. However, I do not believe that Firestorm was a good idea. It wasn't. If they had to here's where I will say is where it could have done well. It was under a bunch of hypothetical scenarios. One, they had made the game separately and not tied it to the Battlefield name. If it was just a Frostbite-based game in a different setting, free to play, not tied to the Battlefield name, it probably would have done well.
Literally every EA Game Changers feedback when it comes to Battle Royale, and they just did not listen to you guys. It's amazing.
But another thing that is a problem is just how irresponsible it came to actually fixing Firestorm. Like the loot system was awful. It just exploded out of bodies, and you're spending a good 1 minute looking around like, is this good?
Where's my
armor?
Can
I get this?
It's in the ground.
I need armor. I need how many people to control a tank? I need to go. It wasn't fun. It felt clunky. And another problem as well, which I think is the big kicker, of course, that probably everybody brings up, it had the unfortunate reality of being released literally at the same time as Apex Legends.
Woo!
Something
Another
that
EA game.
something that was already being worked on for years, and it was just like, oh yes, a free-to-play battle royale in the Titanfall universe with Titanfall controls, a game that literally everybody loves, Titanfall.
Holy shit.
So it
No advertisement.
really
Just came out.
really did not help its case at all. It kind of just put metaphorical nails in coffins one after another. And currently, I'd say we've buried Firestorm 6 feet deep, but it's always interesting to
it's
see
over.
people on Reddit who talk about like, oh, but I loved it. I love playing this game. And unfortunately for me, I'm going, how? How are you loving this and playing this with what people? That's the astonishing part for me. It's like we saw in patch notes a while ago. It's like,
That
oh
is
yeah, we lowered
interesting.
the start to 2 people. I'm like, 2 people?
It's kind of embarrassing, yes.
Only 2 people to start a Firestorm match in that big of a map? How big are your circles? You're expecting people like what? It's a shock, truly, that assets felt
what else are you gonna
burned
do? What else are you
from
gonna
the
do?
core game.
Can't do anything else. There's no money more to put it in.
I understand what they were doing. From a business standpoint, it's a gamble because you're trying to make the audience come to you. You're trying to steal the audience of another game. That's how modern games work. You make shooter, we want shooter's audience. That's what it is.
It's kind of almost like you were given the green light to do this and to make it work, create it. And then a day later, you get an email saying, oh, hey, we're going to shut you down, but you can put out what you got. Like, that's what it felt like to me. Like, why isn't this game getting a hot fix right now? Hello? Anybody out there? Like, you're paying these streamers millions of dollars probably to play your Firestorm, and it's in this completely unfinished state, and then we are expecting, oh, they're gonna patch all that, no problem. I mean, this is Battlefield's Royale. Like, you can't fuck this up. Like, this is your chance if you ever want to do it again. And nothing ever happened. So I felt like they got that email. It was like, hey, we got Apex coming or whatever, and we're putting all of our cards on that. You guys need to stop. Like, that's what it felt like to me.
It's just a lot of different higher ups that, again, goes back to the speculation of pulling the puppet strings of going, okay, this was a failure, shut it down. And
it must be so frustrating
from
as
a developer from a developer standpoint, even from what we've heard, if it's true about like someone saying, oh, we didn't want to change the time to kill, but if someone is literally pulling your strings and making you do it, that must suck as a developer to feel like you have no control over your game and you're just mindlessly typing this code going, oh no, this is not good. Like, if you could see writing on the walls, that's got to be the worst feeling as a developer. And I give my hats off to all of the developers who made this game, man. Like,
oh yeah,
even through all of the bullshit this game has gone through, they've still made a decent product that I've enjoyed, and they have done a good job that way. But I will say it's not perfect. And for the people that are pulling their strings, if they are pulling their strings, I do feel for them, man. I really do.
So no more Firestorms for Battlefield 6, right?
I think they've pretty much confirmed at this point that they can't do that again. If it's not confirmed for them now, I hope they realize that they can't do that again. And if they are, don't associate it with Battlefield and make it free to play.
There you go.
Like, you can't have it tied to your name. But people will play Battlefield for Battlefield, not for a battle royale.
So, just changing the subject here pretty much. What do you wish Battlefield had when it comes to maybe like certain types of weapons for World War II setting? I mean, maps or vehicles, maybe a gadget.
I think
what do you wish it had?
Obviously, for me, and I think it's because I grew up during the time where World War II games were super popular, I want my iconic maps. I do want Normandy. I do want that. And I know a lot of people out there like, oh, I don't want that. I do. I think a lot of people out there would love to see iconic maps again. That was one of the big things that I think is kind of a huge miss on DICE's part for this game, is that They wanted to go for the aspect of unknown battles or battles people may not have known, and that's fine and dandy, but most people who have studied any sort of history want to partake in those large battles. People want to play in Normandy. People want to do Market Garden. People want to do Battle of the Bulge. You know, people want to do that because it actually plays into an immersion factor of enjoyment.
Yeah, but DICE hates doing that. You can see in all their games, everything has to be different from the previous one.
And that's
I hate that.
That's like, definitely a problem for me. Like, I'm okay if you want to keep unknown battles, that's fine. But I don't think you can ignore major ones too. Like,
those are the money makers, right?
Exactly. And I feel that's what they were kind of disregarding too, is that you're going to get people who will probably play a map just for Normandy. They'll pay $60 for it. You never know. But it's definitely something I wish that they had done, because for some of the maps that are out there now, it's some of them feel really weak and some feel pretty good. Like Eris is wonderful in my opinion as a map. And then you get the complete opposite of a map like, oh gosh, what's a good one?
Storm?
Panzerstorm. That's a good one. Yeah. You get the complete opposite of that, where it kind of tries to be like Eris, but it's like, here's Eris, but let's scale it up 10 times and only for vehicles. Also screw your infantry play. That's what it feels like.
We have a question here from the chat. From Tombstone Mercenary. How much damage has been done to the goodwill for the Battlefield franchise, and what would they have to do with Battlefield 6 to try and repair the damage done? I feel like we covered a little bit about that. I don't think Battlefield's over with. I mean, the fact that EA comes out for their Q1 and they say, dude, we're gonna have another Battlefield game, and that means like, hey, they're still invested in DICE and Battlefield, so we have nothing to worry about. And I'm like on my stream saying, oh yeah, you guys think the next Battlefield game's gonna be like, you know, regular old Battlefield with conquest and vehicle warfare and all this good stuff. I'm like, dude, what if the next Battlefield game is a VR game? What are you gonna think about then?
It's one of those things that it's shown on the subject of at least VR. It's not necessarily a bad thing to reinvent the wheel. In the case of, well, look at Valve. Half-Life Alyx just came out. And Half-Life Alyx is that's why their reasoning when you read up behind it, which is very fascinating, as to why they don't release Half-Life games on a regular basis, is because their entire goal for Half-Life games was they wanted to release a game that pushed the game with technology further. That was their goal. So with
it's kind of like James Cameron. It's like James Cameron mentality.
Yes.
It's like, I'm not going to release a fucking movie until I got the technology to release it. And
I'm not going to make a movie until I could take my submarine and touch the bottom of the world. That's what he wants to do. So
that's why there's no Avatar 2 right now.
Yes, it's the same thing for Valve in the sense of they're going, okay, we made Half-Life 1 and then we pushed it further with Source. And now we're pushing it further with Source 2, but in VR. And now it makes you wonder, okay, what are they going to push next technology-wise? But in the case of Battlefield, obviously we don't see that. We see pushes in the engine of Frostbite, and we can see it looks shinier every year. I'll attest to that.
Yeah,
it looks shinier,
beautiful,
but it still has the same problems of the engine. It's basically taking
those legacy bugs.
I always say, you can have a turd and you can polish it and make it look really shiny and really nice, but it's still a turd, and that's the thing. And I do believe that Frostbite, it needs to find its way out the door. I think it's time that a nice change of engine would do them good, not only for the player base, but for developers, specifically because they can bring in different developers that have a fresh set of eyes and can actually try to innovate certain things. I'm not saying go overboard and reinvent the wheel. I'm saying, but take what you have, but just make it shinier and better to play.
I think EA has something up their sleeves. You got new consoles coming out, brand new with new technology in it. Look out, right?
Well, it's 2010 SSDs, yes.
Then you have cross-platform, which
Uh-huh.
is probably almost guaranteed in the next Battlefield game at this point.
Oh, not looking forward to
So,
that.
Frostbite, cross-platform, bruh. Like, it sounds like a nightmare to me. So maybe they're not working, or maybe they made a new Frostbite engine that works well with that. You know, maybe they do have the tech and they're just not showing it yet.
Possibly.
That's what I can hope.
It is possible, but I do think that we probably are going to see another Frostbite game. The one thing that I can probably almost be certain on, and I'll eat my hat if it isn't, is that they will probably make the next Battlefield modern. So many people I know did not buy this current game because of it being set in World War II. So many people are going, oh, World War II again. Oh, no.
Yeah,
Here I am, like, I love World War II games. Yeah, but no, everybody apparently, when you see on the Reddit hive mind, Battlefield 4 apparently was the best FPS ever invented, graced by God himself. So they want a game that's very similar to how Battlefield 4 plays. And so I think this time, because higher ups are probably paying attention, they probably are going to go back to the modern style. And yeah, that's okay, I guess. I really couldn't care. But I think that the modern style, especially a Battlefield 4, is going to sell more copies for them, and that's probably what they will try to do.
True. Well, let's see. We can hope for the best. I'm thinking. I think they got something up their sleeves.
I have no doubt with that. No.
Yeah, don't ever underestimate DICE when it comes to new shit that people have never seen before. You guys like the beard? Oh, thank you. Yeah, I haven't had the quarantine beard.
Oh, yeah, looks good on you, man.
Not till it's all over, man. You see me a baby face. When this is all over, you'll see it once again. I'll probably have tan lines. God dang. Okay. All right, let's switch it up a little bit. Let's talk about your doggo, huh?
Oh, my doggo. I love him.
Well, not your. Okay, we'll get to your mice here in a second, but there's your little doggo, Spark, at your
yeah, that's my
battle
old setup.
station.
My God, that setup is so old now. I still have that poster in the same spot, but I mean, that setup it looks so different now. Still the same desk, different cases, different chair, different monitors, different TV, everything. But yeah, Doggo's still the same. He's still a good boy. He's now 5 years old, I believe. And that's him with his
right?
His name is Spark, or Sparky, but I call him Spark. He was named by my father, who was a fireman in the 70s, and he grew up with other firemen around him having, the old stereotypical Dalmatian in the fire station named Sparky. And he said if he ever got one, he would name him Sparky. His original name, actually, when we got him, was Hogan. His name was Hogan, but he was only like maybe, oh gosh, he was only like 6 months old at the time when we got him. So we started calling
him. Yeah, it looks very young in this one.
Yeah, he's probably about maybe a year or two in that one.
Oh
that was what during
goodness.
Christmas Day when my mom got him a giant candy cane. Oh my gosh, he's such a cute dog. I love him to death.
You say your parents had the other one?
Yeah, my parents have another dog. They also actually have a Dalmatian, and it's not that one, but
okay.
That was his litter mate growing up, and because we got him from California originally, so he was flown up to my state, and that's when we got him up here. But a couple years later, the parents ended up getting their own, and it's a her, and her name is Smokey, and she is much more crazier than my dog currently. My dog is very relaxed and calm, but she's just off the wall. But man, I love him to death. He's such a good boy.
The other interesting thing that you may or may not know about music is a fascination with mice. And
I'm an enthusiast. I am.
I've heard you've had a massive collection of mice. Is that true?
I do. I have a very large collection of mice. That is very true. Now, very much stored on shelves and currently in ottomans as well.
Oh my God. Okay, so why keep them around? Are they like nice and cleaned afterwards, and then like almost like a trophy?
I'm not like super obsessive over them. The weird thing for me is I got into this years ago. Mainly because it's kind of an interesting fascination which plays into just me playing the game, right? It goes to, okay, all of these mice feel very different and perform very different, but which
Yeah.
one works and feels the best for my grip? Like, what feels the best to aim? It's a fun hobby for me because you get all of these things that feel so different that can improve your aim or
Uh-huh.
make it feel drastically different, that it's just fun for me to swap out every now and then. Fun fact, kids, don't look up mechanical keyboards. That's way more expensive. My
Oh, yeah.
my hobby is very much benign compared to mechanical keyboards. Those people, if you want to see elitists and enthusiasts, do not go to our mechanical keyboards.
Oh, baby. You post something in there and you don't know what you're doing, like, look out. The claws come out. No, I've
Get
seen
some
it before.
people.
So that begs the question, what's your favorite so far in your over the
Uh,
years that really stands out, you know?
So it's very weird for me. When I first started competing, I was using an OG Death Adder, or rather, when I was, let's say, when I was
Okay.
playing Counter Strike, I used an MX518, and up until then, when my MX518 original sensor failed, I swapped to the Death Adder, and this is right when the Death Adder had come out,
Oh yeah.
and I used that for a while. Then the scroll wheel broke, and then I upgraded to the newer version, which was the Death Adder 3.5G. I had two of those, all
Hmm.
died the same way. Scroll wheel caved in, and after the third one, I was like, okay, I need to do something different. And this was around the time of Battlefield 4, so that's when I got the original Zowie FK,
Oh
which had
yes.
just come out. And so I used that for a long time, and then my hobby kind of started where it was like, oh look, here's the G302 from Logitech. Okay. Oh, this one I can aim a little bit better with. What happens if I get this one? And then this, you see, kind of
Oh
progressed to where
my
it was a
god.
hobby for me, and it's fun for me. It's just kind of like, it's a weird little thing for me to test, and I know it's weird to a lot of people, but it's fun for me. It really is kind of nice to see which one I can perform the best with, and it really is fun kind of looking back at older mice that I had.
Hmm.
Specifically, like, I've gone back to newer versions of Death Adders. I performed terribly with them. I don't
Oh,
know how I
interesting.
played with them back then. Maybe it's my sensitivities changed over the years, which it definitely has. My grip
Yeah.
has changed over the years. It's always interesting going back and revisiting older ones.
Yeah, I've
But
recently changed my sensitivity for Battlefield 5. It's a whole new experience. It just takes a few weeks to get used to it, really. But I mean, one question I wanted to ask you about your mouse collection is, while playing with Battlefield or even Battlefield 5 right now, do you bind anything specific to your mice other than,
prone,
point
that's
and
it.
click?
Prone
Prone.
is on prone is on my back mouse button. It has been since
Oh, okay.
BF3.
That's
Because
interesting.
my logic behind it is such: if your pinky finger is on shift and the rest of your fingers are on W, A, and D, and the swap
Yeah.
between S, of course, it doesn't leave much room because you have to take a finger off of A to Z or
Yeah,
shift
you
to Z,
can't.
which
Right.
is uncomfortable. And in the heat of combat, it's easier just to move your thumb up with a roll and go prone with your mouse. So I did that for years, and I'm still doing it because it's one less key for me to press in the heat of combat.
Oh yeah, all my defaults are the ones that I've learned, and all my rekey bindings are based on Battlefield 2.
Mhm.
Everything that was the same in Battlefield 2, I still use to this day, until they introduced sliding, which came in Battlefield 1. And I was like, well, I
I will
can't.
still argue against sliding. I think sliding was one of the worst things they ever implemented into Battlefield.
Interesting. Okay, okay. But I couldn't slide because I was, holding down shift. I can't just let go and then hold control. Like, I don't have an extra finger for that. So I have to bind it to my back button to slide.
I guess it's not a
Um,
big deal for me because I can just
oh.
slam my pinky down both on control and shift at the same time for sliding.
Ooh, that's raw. That's
Sliding,
hard.
yeah, no, not really. Once you do it
Wow.
enough, it becomes very easy. But the big thing with sliding is not only does it kind of falls under the same area as vaulting does with the Frostbite engine. An animation plays, but the hitbox is not aligned. So If you're shooting
Oh,
sometimes
no,
at a guy who's vaulting, for instance,
Oh.
you're shooting him and you're not getting registers. You're seeing blood, but you're like, what's going on? Where's his hitbox? And as soon as the animation finishes, it can already like skip a couple frames if he's lagging and he's already shooting you. So it just goes from vault to instantly him shooting you. And you're like, what the fuck just happened? Or if he's not, you know, sometimes you can get it. And it's the same with sliding. Depending on how it goes, their hitbox is either ahead or behind. And it's very frustrating to deal with, not to mention it led to a lot of very predictable players in Battlefield 1, which is the way I would describe it. Players who would play only Automatico, Hellregal, or the amazing God Post buff SMG08, and they would just slide around every corner they came around because you could spam that bad boy, and these dudes would slide around every corner, and you could tell every time you played him, you're like, oh, look at this dot running right to me. All right, I'm just going to aim my mouse low, right at headshot level, and sure enough, zip, here he comes, SMG08 hip fire, and you're like, okay, all right, I get it over with, and you know, that's the thing. I believe that certain mechanics are heavily abused to the point where a lot of people rely on them too heavily. And if ever comes a game where it's removed, they're not going to exceed or adapt to it. It's the same reason why there were people who played BF3 and never went to BF4, because there was a little known mechanic that was heavily abused in competition, by the way, called Euro Hipfire. Why did we call it Euro Hipfire? Because the Europeans learned of it first, and Europeans heavily abused it in competition.
Can you explain it a little bit for the audience? I'm not even sure what that means.
So what European Hipfire entails is people would change it so when they ADS, it would be not a toggle, but like a hold, right? Like what people are probably used to now, I toggle ADS. But what they would do is they would instantly tap their ADS, so it would play the slight animation of going into ADS and back out. But in that frame, if they hit fire and they held it, it would be ADS accuracy while hip firing with the hip fire movement speed. So you would have these people who were perfectly accurate with their M16s and AEKs hip firing you, moving very fast, but at ADS accuracy. And it was heavily abused. And it was something that wasn't fixed for a very long time. I don't even know if it actually was fixed or not. Didn't
they change it in BF1?
This was back in BF3, so this was something that definitely wasn't in BF4, and this was something that I'm pretty sure wasn't in BF1 at all.
Oh, I don't.
Either way, if it still exists in BF3, because it was bad to the point where you would see these people who are just perfect hip firing you, and you're like, oh, he's abusing that.
I see. And I probably would have just called him a cheater.
And it goes back to the statement of these are the people who abused this mechanic and relied on it so heavily that when a new game came out, they couldn't switch because they abused it. They used it too much. They couldn't play the game without it. And it's the same thing with sliding, I feel like, because if there's ever a game where sliding is removed, you're going to be very, very sore, I feel like.
What are people abusing now in BF5? What are they abusing now?
Sliding is still heavily abused. And sliding is still very much heavily abused. It's not as bad as it was in BF1 where you could spam it like every other frame, but it's still very, very bad. So because even I'm guilty of abusing the mechanic, but it's one of those things that you kind of have to do to keep up. But needless to say, if it was removed, I can learn to live without it. Doesn't bother me.
That's going to bother me. I have a feeling that they might get rid of slide, or it's going to turn into the Modern Warfare slide, which is pretty abysmal. I don't know. Tactical sprint is still something I have a hard time adapting to in that game because it's really janky. The whole sprint, you can't reload while sprinting thing bothers the living shit out of me.
Yeah, I agree. It bothers me too.
Yeah. What's the worst Battlefield you've ever played?
Are we including free-to-play versions?
Yeah, sure.
Or AAA titles alone?
Worst Battlefield or EA? Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, there was one free-to-play.
There was two free-to-plays.
Two free-to-play. Yeah, two.
So there was Battlefield Heroes, which was something that people argue that would do well today, and I agree it'd be another Fortnite day. Or
I don't know.
or it was, but the worst one I think I played was probably Battlefield free to play, is what it was called, because it was technically built off the backbone of the Frostbite engine, but baked into your browser. And it was really weird. It was like they tried to take BF2 and then add the Frostbite into it. Just didn't play good. It wasn't good. It was like this weird abomination that they just like took BF2 and Bad Company 2 and slammed them together in a web browser, and it just played awful. It wasn't fun.
Man, we have a lot of comment. That was my worst rated one. Was play for free.
If we're talking about free to or just AAA games alone of Battlefield releases and not free to play, it's still probably Hardline for me just currently, because Hardline, well, the beta was fun. I loved the first beta because it felt somewhat reminiscent of BC2 to me, which was fun. However, the game it worked, right? But somehow down the line, they did what they did currently with the time to kill changes, but they didn't make the weapons worse in the sense of it took longer to kill. No, it was too quick. Like it felt like you were playing hardcore. And after a while, it just wasn't fun because the metas for weapons were defined within a week. Like I can name all of the weapon meta right now for Hardline. M16, M416, SA58, 300 Blackout. Oh, and my favorite, K10. K10 defensive perk.
Love that gun.
Everybody and their mother was running, and we called this during the second beta too. We're like, this is bad. Everybody, because at this point, this wasn't like things are going to be changed. This was, oh, this is what we're getting. And what we got was the K10 being just an absolute equivalent to what the Type 2A was a couple months ago. However, the K10, I will argue, wasn't nearly as bad as the Type 2A, but it was up there, man. Like, it was bad. Everybody was running around with it. And then once the K10 was nerfed, it was just all of those weapons I mentioned.
They do this in every Battlefield game. There has to be the fast firing pew 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 gun that all the noobs are gonna love. You know what I'm saying?
My conspiracy theory is that there is some developer out there in the back end who's just like who's like showing up to the office really late at night when people go home, and he's just like, all right, time to code, and then he just tosses it in there, and people somehow overlook it. It was like the same thing with the AA in Battlefield 4. It's like someone just threw that in there and gave it Zunies and called it good, flipped it in there, and someone just didn't realize it.
Oh yeah, and probably midway through Battlefield 1, it was like, oh yeah, I see your Automatico. Yeah. Guy goes in the back, he's like, okay, what's the shittiest gun out there? What about this SMG08, slow fire rate, big box mag, everyone hates it. All right, I'll get my fingers in this thing.
Yeah, dipped his fingers in the pie, and there it is, over buffed and OP. It's a very, I will say they are consistent in one thing that I've noticed. Either a gun is heavily over-tuned or over-nerfed, and in nothing feels consistent. And that's my problem, is you can have like 3 guns that feel really solid in a class, and the rest feel bad. Yeah. So what they'll do is, instead of raising up those guns to those levels, they'll take those ones that are good and bring them down, which is just like, well, now you've taken the fun ones and we're back down to just not feeling fun at all.
Yeah.
Why can't we bring up the other ones that felt bad to the fun level? So that's the problem, is nothing feels consistent balance wise with weapons, because there are heavy outliers in any game you play in the Battlefield franchise.
Yeah.
Except for BC2, I will argue, where every gun felt fun to use.
Slightly off topic, I kind of missed the whole rocket launchers that were on a wire, the wire guided rocket launchers. If you look at my battle log, I still believe the straw is my number 2 most used weapon. You killed me so many times with that goddamn thing.
That's because it was the closest thing we ever got to the AT4 again, and the AT4 was so good in BC2. And then once we got our hands on what was basically the AT4 2.0, it was a lot of fun. Not to mention just the jankiness that you could use originally with it, which they changed later, rightfully so. But then they did the thing that we just talked about and nerfed it into the ground. Remember this highlight specifically.
Oh no, this is it right here. All right, watch here. Listen.
To the north.
Incoming
This is it.
Rock cruise missile.
So what you could do right there is you could fire it,
Nice.
forget, retrain it for a
have
second,
that
and the missile will
though.
go, oh, yep, go there, boom. Yep, right there. I loved it. As much as it was broken, I loved it because it got rid of the sniper problem, man. You'd have these guys who go up on the roof, bail from choppers, and just set up shop, and then it was just like the get off of that, play the game.
Oh, this is poor Fedge in a tank. You discovered him in a unique little situation he's trying to get out of. Let's see. Tank gameplay.
Oh, Fedge!
Help, I can't get up. Oh, so nice.
Oh. Yep. I forgot about the plane crash and it tips him right back.
Help!
Oh no, it's over. Oh, just the comedic timing. You couldn't get that any better. Just you fix him and then right back on his side. Oh my gosh. There are some things in this game that you can't make up, but that's one of the things that I will argue that's really kind of frustrating about this game, where you take the whole slogan of only in Battlefield, right? That hasn't meant a thing in years. I would argue it hasn't meant a thing since BF4, but they basically have tried to take out any sort of randomness that can make the game, I wouldn't say broken, but just kind of fun. Like you don't have to actively play the game, but you can like launch things and run up on tanks in a car and put C4 on the back and shoot it with a sniper rifle, and then it shows up as the sniper rifle killing the tank. Like those things are fun. That's only in Battlefield to me. And
that's why I had the Team Mountain Goat guys. I had them on last time. The last show, previous episode. And that's all they do, man, is C4 stuff, jump over things, climb things, and they were the epitome of, only in Battlefield.
Kudos to them, but I can only imagine that a lot of their stuff that they pull off, is it something that they can actively go out of their way to do in a live game?
Yeah,
because it probably takes much more setup nowadays to do specific things.
Yeah, earlier on
that's one of the things that I will always define as always in Battlefield is like it's the stuff that just happens in normal games that really define what the game is. Like it's neat that they set that stuff up, and I'm glad it's still there. But I wish that certain things like that could be pulled off in live games.
Yeah, they started using the sniper decoys to climb on literally anything, go up to the top of the skybox or climb up to the top of Rotterdam White House.
Yeah.
But then DICE was like, we can't have that, so they got rid of it, and they were all sad. But
it was the same thing when they took out Mav riding way back in the day in the previous game.
Yeah, Mav riding. Yep. That's what happens when you got to play catch up all the time. And it's like,
speaking of catch up, I'm just curious now. I'm asking you this. How do you feel about the catch up mechanic in this game?
Oh my god, every stream I mention that when we're obliterating a team. Like, oh hey, look, we lost everything, guys. Catch-up mechanic. Like, it's still in there, but it has to be like, what, 400 to 100 or something?
It's even very inconsistent. I've noticed that it can trigger is what it feels like anytime is what it feels like anytime it can trigger.
Bad. It was so bad in the beginning. I was like,
it's still bad. There are times where you could be obliterating a team and you'll just see you'll look across the map that some dude just one person who happened to slip by, and he'll go to your gimme and he steps on the flag and it's one person and he caps it like that, instantly flipped, and you're like, what? That's one person, and I'm here with my whole team trying to cap one flag that's taking 5 hours. It's I as someone, I understand why it's there. I should back this up. I got to look at it from both perspectives, and I really do. For the casual player's perspective, I understand why it's in the game as a hand-holding based mechanic.
Mm-hmm.
It instills the false sense of you're not really losing the game. The game is close. Look, you're coming back. But for the person who has played Battlefield enough, you're going, why is this here? If my team is doing well, I don't think little Timmy should be rewarded for just stepping on a flag by himself. How do you learn from your mistakes? You get put through the fire and the flames and you learn. But they don't want that, which is very confusing to me.
It's
why
confusing. No, it's dumb because the developers, I see them in interviews like, oh, if you want to win, got to win as a team. You know, that was like one of their big things. You got to play the objective and you got to win as a team. All right, can't do it by yourself. And that was like one of the big things for BF5, especially at the beginning. And shit, you even heard this stuff in BF4, BF1, all those games. So you have all these random assignments. Assignment thing is a whole different discussion, but you have things in there that are anti-PTFOing, and there's a lot of mechanics in the game like bipoding or standing still or being an objective and kill someone outside of it,
right,
or inside of it. It doesn't want you to move. Like those need to be, get rid of those.
I will still argue that the PTFO, and to me, and I've always said this too, is such a weird term to me because it started, I believe, around the time of BF3 is when it became very popular. The term of PTFO, along with another one of my favorite terms, aggressive recon. We can talk about that one later. PTFO to me is such, and you see it tossed around willy-nilly within the Battlefield community, and it's like, well, that's just called playing the game in my eyes. You guys, are you guys not playing the game? Like, are you guys not doing the thing, the game mode, the thing where you go to the thing?
No,
what, like
never.
But it seems to be tossed around so much that I don't know. Whenever I see it, I just go, yes, they play the game. Yes.
This is why we can't have nice things, man. I feel like maybe Battlefield Conquest was so complicated back in the day that it's like, we gotta simplify it somehow. I don't know, like change the ticket system, make it, you know, go the other way now in BF1. Like, why? I don't understand why they got to you know, cater to the new player. You know, why can't there be a bigger skill gap like there was in, you know, Bad Company 2?
It's a different generational
different
thing.
Generation, yes.
That's I've said this many times on my stream before too, which is we live in a day and age now where we're appealing to the gamer who is now, I guess if you want to use the term Zoomer,
yes.
Zoomers who want instant gratification now. It's not about taking the time and practicing the skill to become better at something. It's to get that 5-minute instant endorphin brain appealing thing. Like you need it. You need that quick hit to the brain to feel good. And that's the thing that bothers me today more than anything else is there are so many inherent mechanics baked in to modern games to feel good to the casual player, but nobody wants to take the time to become better at the game.
Right. DICE needs to really focus on their Battlefield veterans, man. Like,
I mean, I understand that I'm not the
treat
focus.
us better.
We're not the target demographic anymore. We're being shipped out the door, unfortunately, and that's just how it is.
We get dog tags now, and pull the bugger
thank
off.
you for my consolation prize.
Like, oh, you played all of our games for the past decade. Here's a little, you know, dog tag for you. Is that cool? What's your opinions on Rush? Should they kept it permanently or no?
Yeah, if I had to choose, I would say yes, it should have been permanent. But like before, I feel like Rush hasn't been good since BF3. I would argue is probably the last time it felt somewhat decent, because it goes
Yeah.
back to the earlier conversation of maps being designed for the mode.
Yeah.
And when they first shut off Damavan Peak, for example, it was all built around Rush. You would get the first
Oh, yeah.
stage, go down the hill, get the second stage, and then you jump off the dam. And that was what was cool, and everybody loved that. So if they can bring back Rush in the next game and potentially build on the Rush mode itself for maps, I think it would be a big hit once again. And I hope they do that.
Yeah, I think they should get rid of Squad Conquest and put Rush in there, since
I
they
would
don't have
agree.
the tech to add anymore. Might as well like delete Grand Operations and put in, I don't know, whatever's popular at the time.
Grand Operations was a big hit in Battlefield 1. Everybody loved it.
No.
Personally
Breakthrough was not Grand
In Bat-
Operations.
in Battlefield 1.
Yeah, that was Breakthrough. We didn't have like Airborne in BF1.
Oh, well, I guess so, yes. I'm more referring to just, it was called Grand Operations.
Oh, like the title. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, they bastardized it here in freaking Battlefield 5. It's like a mix of modes with days that don't matter, whether you win or not, and then a very rare last game mode, Last Stand, I think it's called.
I've only seen it, in the whole time I've played this game, I've only experienced it twice. That Last Stand, twice.
Yeah, there you go. But okay, that's what I would do for those game modes. Again, technology's slim nowadays, guys. Okay, guys. It's been 3.5 hours. I think this is a good spot to end it. Of course, if you guys missed any of this, you can watch it after the show here on my YouTube channel or here in the Twitch video section. If you guys enjoyed the show, we're gonna have another one next week with a group of friends of mine that you should not miss. I'm not gonna spoil who it is yet, but we'll see how it goes next Saturday, 8 p.m. Pacific, right here on this channel. If you guys enjoyed it, give the channel a follow, and of course, don't forget to go follow Music here streaming.
Same for my community here, because I know I recognize a bunch of people in chat. Please give a follow to Julian. He's a great dude. So thank you, man, for having me here. It was very kind of you to have me.
Yeah, this was a lot longer than I expected. Man, Music, you're a talker, my man. You're a talker.
I could talk, like I said, I could probably talk about Battlefield for so many days on end. It's not even fun.
Thank you, man. All right, well, it was a good talk, guys. Stick around here. We're gonna go raid somebody, probably here in the Battlefield section. Music, stick around here. We'll say our goodbyes. And again, guys, thank you so much. Thanks for the follows, guys. And we shall see you tomorrow. I'm just gonna do regular old stream and for Battlefield 5 gameplay. And yeah, that'll be pretty much it. Music, have a good night.
Thanks, guys. Thank you, man.
Chat, good night, guys.
Good night, chat. See you later.